The face of addiction has changed. While criminals, drug dealers, drug users, and the homeless continue to roam back alleys or sell themselves on Motel Row surprises no one. A new chapter to the old story is being written with the blood-stained tears from parents of what Koreans call han, a sadness so deep, so horrific, that it burns in one's soul so that tears can no longer fall. The story of the overdosing drug addict no longer takes place miles away. It's no longer in those neighborhoods. It's happening in homes like yours. It's 2 doors down from mom and dad's bedroom, right under your nose. It's the high school quarterback, the smartest student, the most vibrant cheerleader, and the most talented musician. It is someone very much like your daughter or your son that thinks they have everyone fooled. Yes, drugs are still bought in the sleazy parts of town, and yes, your children know exactly where to get them, but times have changed. Now they are bought as parents are having dinner or watching a movie, and you as parents have no idea this is happening. Keeping your kids home used to mean you were keeping them safe. Now the drug that may kill your child is being delivered to your home right in front of you. This story takes place in our community and thousands of other communities, right here, right now.
My name's Melissa DeVoe. I was raised here in Fresno. Spent the last 30 years in San Diego raising my son, Taylor. I was shocked that he overdosed. I just thought, oh, he's too smart for that. Generally speaking, we do everything for our kids to give them a good life. And are we perfect? Was I perfect? No. But this does not discriminate. Good parents, bad parents, absent parents, present parents, rich parents, poor parents. This does not discriminate. This is everywhere.
My son, Jackson Smith, at the age of 22, bought a counterfeit oxy that was laced with fentanyl. He was such a good kid. He was so sweet. Everybody loved him. I don't think he had an enemy in the world. He was just such a nice person, and cared about so many. This pain of losing a child is the greatest pain you can ever experience, I guarantee you. And it's sad when people think that it's not going to happen to their family. I thought that too. I thought it was, it's other people it happens to. Well, it can happen to anybody.
My name's Elaine Hudson. I was born and raised in Fresno. I have 3 children. Well, I do have 3 children. On the morning of April 17th, 2020, I'm an early riser. I was up about 5:30 and I made my coffee, done my morning routine. I'd been going in and out all day long, and I just assumed that Frankie had gotten up and then went back to his room. I came in and I took a shower, and his phone was ringing and ringing and ringing, and I sent him a text message, "Hey, what's up?" No response. Then I got worried.
We lived in Encinitas, my son and I, so we would come to Fresno to see family, but he was an outdoor kid and he loved to skateboard, and this is the skateboard park that he wanted to go to every time we came. I believe it was right at the beginning of his senior year or a little bit before, I get a call from his girlfriend's mom. She said, I need to talk to you. I've got to tell you something that Laura, his girlfriend at the time, told me. She told me that Taylor's been using heroin, and also that he had been molested by a family friend for years. So I got that phone call with both of those things at one time. I almost fell over. The first thing I wanted to do was get him into rehab. Now, finding an appropriate and a good place for a 17-year-old to go that's inpatient, that is not astronomically expensive, is really difficult. I was fortunate enough to find a place in Orange County, and he probably would have been more successful had he stayed longer, but he was there for 30 days. Mom, I'm good, you know, I can leave here now, I'll do fine, I got this, you know, and me, I was still naive at the time and, you know, wanted my baby back at home, in his own room and bed, you know, still used to me, he was still a child.
Did you approach him about the molestation?
Yeah, he didn't really want to talk about it too much, but he said, yeah, you know, it was true. And, you know, there's a police report, there's still an open police report, but there was no charges against him he wasn't prosecuted.
What does that person do for a living?
He's a graphic artist in the surf and skateboard industry.
So he's around a lot of kids?
Mm-hmm.
Still to this day?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
He was supposed to pick his girlfriend up around 6 o'clock. Well, 6 o'clock came, and I still hadn't seen him. So I went to his door, and it was locked. And I went and got the key, and I opened it up. I could tell he'd been dead for a long time. He was laying on his bed. He still had his headphones on. So when he died, I think he just kind of fell back, and his arms were back. But he was gray. I mean, just... Once the police came, they wouldn't let me back in his room because the Xanax that he took.
Is that what killed him?
A Xanax laced with fentanyl. He had chopped it up and he had snorted it. And it was on his table where his Xbox is at. So they wouldn't let me, you know, go back in his room. I didn't want to go back there anyway, so I couldn't see my son like that. It was bad enough when I opened the door.
Jackson had gone to a party. The intent was to drink and to play video games. It was about 2:42 in the morning, and I get a phone call from the girl that he was with. He had been dating her for a few months, and she told me that she had called 911 because he wasn't breathing. So we rushed to the hospital and identified myself, and the guard said, well, is that the person they just brought in? And I said, probably so. And the look on his face, it wasn't good. This was bad. I knew it was bad. The girl told me that it was, he did not feel comfortable, so he wanted to leave. They went to In-N-Out Burger, came home, and then she said to me, we were eating in his room, we were on the bed, and all of a sudden, he fell in his plate of food. That's what she kept saying. So she called 911, and then the ambulance came, and they did what they could, and they took him to the hospital. I don't believe that's what might have happened.
In the 7 years that he was alive after I found out that he was using, he spent most of that time either in a sober living or in a rehab. Did really well. You know, to be honest with you, he had way more sober time in that 7 years than he did using time. He wasn't on the streets ever. He wasn't built for that. I knew he had relapsed, so he took a leave of absence from work, and I came and picked him up and brought him back to Fresno with me. He seemed to have a handle on it. He was doing good, you know, but it was a relapse. It was a relapse that ultimately took him out. I thought, there's got to be fentanyl. It has to be fentanyl. There's no way. But it was heroin. How did he get this stuff here? He doesn't live here. You know, none of my family members use those kinds of, nobody he knew. Craigslist. He used Craigslist. The poison that killed him was delivered to my house. They brought it to my apartment when I was sleeping. Poof, just in one night, that one decision. It was too easy.
I went back on my Ring camera to see who came over the night that he died. And there was a couple people that came over that night. They brought him pills.
What I think happened is he took that pill at that party. He passed out in the car. He was ODing. She thought he was asleep. She gets the food, comes to our house, and she cannot get him out of the car because he is passed out. I think she called her friends. They got him out of the car, placed him in his room, concocted the story. The friends leave, and then she calls 911. Narcan would have saved his life, or it could have saved his life, but unfortunately, when the paramedics arrived on scene and they asked her, did he take any drugs, she said no. So she lied, and he didn't get the Narcan that he needed. He was in full cardiac arrest, and he didn't get it.
Narcan is an opioid reversal agent that binds to the opioid receptors. It is the only substance that will bring somebody out of an opioid overdose if you can get to them in time. If you don't get to that person in minutes, the chances of them not making it are extremely high. Narcan has no other properties to it other than that. It brings somebody out of their overdose. It needs to be kept in everyone's household, like an EpiPen or a fire extinguisher. This is a life-saving tool that paramedics carry. If your 3-year-old gets into the bottle and they squirt it up their nose, nothing is going to happen to that child. It has no other properties whatsoever. Even though you may not have a child that's using drugs in your home, what happens if they bring a friend over that is? And you have no idea that this young person that's sitting in your living room is going into overdose.
It's an extra layer of precaution to fight from both sides. So we can tell people, don't abuse drugs, don't ever use them. You can do as many campaigns in high schools and middle schools as you want. People are still going to do it, so you need to have a layer of protection. So you should let them know the resources available to them if they run into problems, whether that's Narcan or if they find themselves being addicted, other resources in their community to help them get out of that.
The inaction of the people that were with Jackson contributed to his death. They were fearful. If they said that he took drugs, then it could implicate them somehow and that they were going to get in trouble with the law. But I can tell you that that's not the way it works.
When somebody overdoses on let's say a pill, a pressed pill or whatever it is, and they need medical attention, there really is no crime. Okay, so once someone has ingested that, the only thing they could potentially be charged with is a misdemeanor possession of fill in the blank, whatever it is, heroin, a prescription that's not yours, fentanyl, whatever, which is quite honestly in California like a traffic ticket. I have never in my tenure as district attorney seen or condoned or allowed a child or an adult who has been in an overdose situation to be charged with possession of whatever drug it is. The issue is that it's got to be the question, if they survive, is how can we prevent them from continuing to be involved in this type of activity, which is dangerous, obviously, to their life and threatening to their life.
I don't think that people realize the effect on their own community. In the news, we try to tell people this is affecting housewives, this is affecting children, this is affecting every single community that you could picture. It isn't people on the streets wandering around who are the only ones addicted. It could be your boss, it could be your friend, your coworker. We try to tell people that, but from a news perspective, people are wary of fear-mongering or looking for clicks. So in this particular instance, as truthful as we can be about it, people take everything with a grain of salt. And so I think that nobody thinks anything could happen to them. There's that barrier. So even when we warn people, we're up against quite a bit in trying to actually convince people of the danger.
People don't have the medical knowledge to understand that the human body reacts differently. Everybody reacts differently to certain drugs. And what happens with addiction is some people can use drug A, whatever it might be, recreationally for their whole lives. And because of the makeup of their body or their situations or their self-control, they may never become addicted to that. But there are other people who simply become addicted the first time they use, whether that's cocaine, whether that's the buzz they feel from an oxy, from a Vicodin, and they're done. You know, they're literally, their lives are altered in that moment. And then there's the average person, which takes some time to go through the cycle, which is use, abuse, and addiction.
Yeah, I'm an alcoholic addict, and I got sober September 26th of 2013 by the grace of God, and as of recent, I'm currently serving the call as a worship pastor at First Street Church in Fresno. The very first time I'd say I tried drugs was in sophomore year when I attended a kickback with some buddies, and first night of true freedom, and that was my first experience hitting from a bong. That was the start of the perpetual trip down the rabbit hole. And then when college hit, and I had the ability to make choices that weren't necessarily accountable to anyone other than myself, and I didn't know at the time but to God and to the people who were close in my life. There was a significant jump.
What drugs were you selling at this point?
I was selling pot, any pills, some hallucinogens, gold caps, shrooms, sometimes some acid tabs, and but mainly it was pot and pills. And yeah, I was full-time college student, part-time worker, shift manager.
My name is Kelsey Egason. I've been in recovery since I was 16. So I entered in recovery in 2006. I'm a former athlete, nationally ranked cheerleader and gymnast. I started struggling with depression and anxiety, but at the time I didn't know what it was. You start piling on these bricks, of life, and the pressure was just so much for me, and the depression was causing me to have loss of identity. And when you lose yourself, you lose your self-worth, your self-esteem. You start to question everything. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? And those thoughts rolled into, I don't want to be alive, this is too much, and the suicidal thoughts started coming. And I think in order to escape all of those emotions, I ran to drugs. And so at 15, I started smoking pot, and at 16, I started using cocaine.
I was entering my adolescence. Tourette's were getting worse. My suicidal tendencies from a young age were even worse as well, and it was just like a staircase, and it was just stacking and stacking. I was just getting higher, ready to fall. And that's that fall came at about 16, and that's where I really entered drug addiction.
When I remember it now, I get really sad, because to me, using drugs is self-harm. It's the same as cutting your wrists. It's the same as you don't put something in your body and not know what it's going to do to you and call it self-care. It is self-harm. And when I think about the first time I did that line, I didn't know when I did that line that was going to be the start of a decade-long suicide wish. Yeah, it made me feel better. It told me lies. You're accepted. Who cares what people think? I went from Kelsey, who still really cared and had a vision, to you never have to fucking worry about anything again, because you got me. You have cocaine.
the line to everyone. Though it was intoxicating, it was more all I really started to know. And I felt more weight and guilt from that than I did in regards to breaking the law.
My parents were, they had enough, you know, by 18. That's when, but I left on my terms. You know, I knew they had enough, because I wasn't changing. You know, I didn't leave because they had enough, though. I left because of me. I was a selfish POS, you know.
I remember using, like, I would pray and I'd be like, God, like, please forgive me. Like, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this to myself, but, you know, I would tell him, like, I don't know what to do with all my pain and all my experiences, and you're using these drugs and you're just so out of your mind and you're so high and you don't even really have like a real thought. You know, everything you think is so driven by this drug, and you know, there were times it gave me courage to face my fears and my pain, and I would say, okay, now I'm gonna think about all the things that I need to fix, and I'm gonna think about them and then I'm gonna fix them, and then I would never do it.
It's tough to put a positive spin on this in a way that is encouraging, but each of us are fooled every day, all the time, from every which angle. And it's the easiest to be fooled by those close to you. I would lie to my parents and give them a nugget of truth that they could, or my friends or sibling could testify to. Like I'm always in feeling guilty, you know, proving myself innocent. But then you twist that truth, or the way you serve it and deliver it, where it accommodates this veneer, the facade of being well-behaved, following the rules, being obedient. But I would say to trust your gut. Trust your gut. When something feels off, pray about it. Speak to your significant other, the siblings, their friends, you know. Just, it's not out of incriminating or convicting or judging them, because they feel that regardless of how you feel. They feel that from everyone. I felt that from everyone. But just put a little, and as opposed to just going right to discipline, don't do this, just why? What's really going on? We love you. And my parents did do that, but it placed them in a point of desperation. There was so much distrust, disobedience, brokenheartedness, making them feel like a failure and past the point of no return.
You know, almost dying 4 times in a night from overdoses or from smacking my head on a glass table. They talk about, you know, the desire being lifted. I never understood that until the last time I used. I felt that, and then I understood it, because really, it's just, I don't have that desire anymore. I want to change people's lives and to speak to those who have no hope and to give them that, to show them that they're enough and that they can get through whatever the hell they're getting through or going through, because, you know, if I could do it, they could.
I look back on little Kelsey and I think, wow, you bad. You took on some big, and I showed no fear. You know, I went for it. And I messed up a lot. You know, I've hurt a lot of people, but I have the gift of being alive today to make those things right. You know, I want our community to understand that as long as moms are sick, children will suffer. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you you're not gonna have consequences for asking for help. You don't have to be an addict, because that's what you are. I will not let my addiction define me. I'm going to redefine what it looks like to live with an addiction as a mom.
Frankie had 6 times the lethal dose of fentanyl in his system, so the coroner said he was probably dead within 15 to 20 minutes. These drug dealers are making these pills with a pill press. They look very similar to a Xanax, but I found the pills in his bedroom, and they were in a plastic bag and I barely picked the plastic bag up, and they were like crumbling. So the detectives took them, they were analyzed. But the thing is that each pill could have a different amount because those drug dealers don't measure. They just toss it in and that's it. So.
The girl who was with Jackson that night, who claimed to the paramedics that he didn't take anything, is the one that told me who the drug dealer was, because she was with him at the time of the sale, and she provided me with his address. A police investigation was started and didn't go very far because the girl refused to cooperate with the police.
We are in a crisis in our county, in our state, in our nation, that there is so much drug activity and there is so much criminal activity that a drug pusher, a courier, a dealer is not looked upon by the system anymore as a potential murderer. And that's why we're losing these kids left and right.
These drug dealers, you're really going to trust where they're getting their pills from? I mean, maybe they don't even know they're selling you fentanyl, but where are they getting it from? And they don't care if the person lives or dies. They're just there to make money.
90% of this crap is cut. Majority of that 90% is fentanyl, meth, heroin. You know, anything that's not what you're looking for, it has.
Fentanyl is so prevalent out on the street. It's laced in just about every drug out there, and it is so deadly.
The opioid crisis itself has shifted in that at first people were getting addicted to the opioid itself, and that would lead them to do other drugs. So that became a problem in and of itself. And then now things have shifted so that people are starting thinking they're taking one drug and finding out it's laced with fentanyl. And so now fentanyl as an opioid is the bigger problem, but people don't even realize they're taking it, or if they do, they don't realize the amount.
And so I think the thing that we really have to focus on is education and awareness of parents and teachers and doctors and nurses and average Joes and average Janes to say, like, hey, this can happen to you. Because if we don't do that, we're going to continue to lose our young people to this terrible addiction.
I think parents ought to sit and talk with their kids when they're in the 5th grade. And I think that every parent is afraid to sit down with their kid and have that discussion with them. And there's a lot of reasons why those parents won't sit down with them. But in this day and age, parents have to realize that experimentation is going to kill their child. Today, when you experiment, you can actually play Russian roulette and you may wind up dead.
I'm never gonna get over this, ever. You learn to live with it because that's the only choice that you have, but you never get over it. I do not want a parent to go through what I did when I opened up that bedroom door and I found my son dead.